Thank you so much for coming back, tuning in, and looking at my next review uh, for 1980 science fiction fantasy flicks. The top of my list, like the top five, and this is number four, and it's Somewhere in Time. Um, Now this one, I hope you've seen it. There's definitely going to be some spoilers in here. Uh, this one Uh, I I know to some people this is a real gem, or it could be a real hidden gem for some people. To me, like the directing, the music, the acting, the cinematography, it's all like great. And to some people out there, they might be a little perturbed. This one isn't higher, but um, I'll give some reasons as I go along, perhaps maybe why it's not so high, but this is a really good flick, Somewhere in Time. Um, Originally, I've read the novel by Richard Matheson, who is, well, to me, like extremely well known horror, science fiction writer, novelist. He wrote the novel I Am Legend, which has been made into a movie three times. The last time by Will Smith, the other two by Vincent Price. Um, and wow, why does his name escape me? Charlton Heston, Omega Man. Um, but yeah, it was written by Richard Matheson. I think it was released in 1975. It was called Bid Time Return, and the novel's pretty good as well. It's pretty close. Some differences where I think he in the novel he goes into. It's set in California. This is set in Chicago, North versus South. Um, where it takes place, um, as well as I think he has like a terminal disease or illness. I forget what it was, but going on as well. And in the film, that's not going on. Um, there are some differences, but if you never read it, go out and look for it. I got it at my local library, so I figure it's got to be out there somewhere. You could read it. And if you're a big fan of the flick, maybe buying it ain't too bad of an idea. You'd probably get a good price finding it somewhere. But it was through Universal Pictures. This was done, directed by Jeannot Zwork, who had done a couple years earlier, also through Universal Pictures, did Jaws 2. And I think that was their biggest hit of the year of 1978 for Universal was Jaws 2. So the production head agreed with Zwerk, I owe you a favor if you ever want one, more or less. And this was the favor. Because Universal Pictures was becoming rather apprehensive about making this film. Um, so they slashed the budget in half. It was supposed to be 8 million. It turned out to be 4 million. And I guess these guys were pulling their heads off thinking, how are we going to do this for 4 million bucks? And they do a splendid job um, with the costumes. They're terrific as well. Which I forget who did it, but I believe he got an Oscar nomination for the costumes as well. So um, what I'll do is right at the end of the video, I'll put in because I forgot to write them down and look that up, but um, the nominations or Oscars that this film did receive. Um, so I'll put that at the end of the video. So now, also for his work, well, I'm looking up his career. I didn't count it out, but most of the stuff he had done was actually done on TV. Going back way back into the late 60s when he did a couple episodes of Ironside with Raymond Burr. Up until I believe it was 2019, so not that long ago, he did a Grey's Anatomy show. And in the end, he did 15 of them. Um, I never seen that show. I think it's very popular, but but yeah, so he did a lot of stuff on TV. So, um, but it was released on October the 3rd, 1980. And as well, as I said, it had a budget of 4 million bucks. Now, in today's money, that would be 14, just under 14.8 million for the budget of the film, uh, compared to, I think, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which I saw at the theater, and I must say it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. But I think the budget for that was like around 300 million, $300 million. So gigantic difference. But I mean, we're talking Indiana Jones here, so. Um, but in return, as they say, like, because as well, I have the DVD of Somewhere in Time. I was gonna grab it and show it, but whatever. I have the DVD for it. The front cover's got a uh, like some of these reissues or movies that come out with different a different cover than the poster art. A lot of the time, it's very meh, like not very good. It's of Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour, the two stars of the film, looking in the distance over the ocean or something. It looks very romancy, which this film is straight up. But I don't know. Didn't really fall in love with the front of it. But I'd seen the movie. I knew how good it was, so that didn't matter to me. It really doesn't matter to me, because the cover art to the film originally wasn't all that spectacular. It was better, but it wasn't earth-shatteringly amazing anyway. But anyways, I have the DVD and it's got a pretty cool documentary on the making of Somewhere in Time, and some of that information is right here in my review as well, that I'll share with you. And I think it's become common knowledge you can find on the internet as well. But it runs over an hour, that documentary, so it's pretty good. They talk to the director Zwark and the composer John Barry, as well as Richard Matheson, who wrote it, Christopher Reeve, Jane Seymour, and even Christopher Plummer is in there as well. So talking to everybody in this one on that one. So, um, but they were able to pull in 9.7 million at the box office. Now, like within the documentary, and from what I hear and read, it was a bomb at the box office. Not so in my mind. They made more than double their budget back. If they did pump 8 million into it, maybe no, not really. That's not a real success, but they made more than half their money back. And I found out this film was huge in Asia. It was the pits in the States, but it was huge in Asia, and it played in Hong Kong for 18 months straight. That's exceptional. I guess that's where they made their money back. Luckily, they were able to release it there and did so, and it was a huge success there. So that's really great. The U.S. critics hated it when it came out, but as Christopher Reeve said in the documentary that I just saw, um, he said it was a little thing, kids, if you don't know what it is, cable TV saved it. They put it on cable TV in LA. People in LA saw it and they got real positive feedback from it. And I think then it started making rounds on cable TV, perhaps through other stations and such, showing Somewhere in Time. So now, Now, to go through the story and the characters, I think the film really starts off really well. Um, as you, I think you hear him before you see him. You hear Christopher Reeve talking. I know what he sounds like. I mean, that's Superman. I know what he sounds like. You hear him, and then you see him from behind, and he's talking to critics and students. I think he's in Mill Haven College at the time. 1972 is when it takes place. I remember that for sure. But this elderly lady, played by Susan French, walks up to him. And he's like startled just the sight of her. And then she puts a watch in his hand. And she just says to him, "Come back to me." And then it really does a very good job in setting up the next 15 to 20 minutes of the film. We were wondering, who is this lady? What's her story? How does he know her? It seems like she does, but he doesn't know her. What's their story? What's going on here? So it really does a good job. And then, in addition, it does a good job as you, the audience, find things out as Christopher Reeve or Richard Collier does, who is a playwright. Uh, and then after that, it brings up to modern times or 1980. He's a playwright and he's written a couple of big plays, so he's on to writing another play, and it's not working out so well. The writing isn't clicking. He's just off. It's not working. But man, he's maybe just me, but no, like he seems like a pretty lonely guy. He's all alone in this world, more or less. So he's a pretty lonely guy at the same time. So he can't get the writing done, so he decides, I'm going to hit the road. Maybe on the road, the juices will get flowing, get in another atmosphere, a different setting. Let's go. So he hits the road. He has no idea where he's going, and then he stops at and sees and then stops at the Grand Hotel. So he pulls his car in there, and then after he gets a room with a gorgeous view, he's then waiting for the restaurant to open so he can get a meal. He's got to wait 40 minutes. So he's wondering what to do, and he sees, I think it's called the Hall of History for that very hotel. So he goes in there, and this is a really great scene to me, and I think of many other people too. He's looking around. It's almost like a throwaway scene where you're just like, oh, okay, he's just killing time. We're killing time before that restaurant opens, whatever, right? But then you see him. I'm not sure what he's looking at because I'm like concentrating on everything else. Like it's got some great lighting, but he turns his back and the camera's coming in slowly towards him, and it almost feels like there's something pulling at him, just like tapping him on the shoulder, saying, "Hey, Richard, Richard, over here. I'm over here." It's almost like that's going on, and then he turns, and then he sees this photo of an actress or an actor of many moons ago, and her name is Elise McKenna. He sees her, and just instantly, he's fallen in love with her. Um, Only to find that, you know, the photo was taken in like 1912. It's 1980 now, so like that's not modern a modern photo of her or what have you. So, but it's a great scene because of all those things, and he even like walks closer, and then it shows the light shining in, and him like squinting, trying to get a good look, and the lights just right in the camera. It's really good. Very effective. Very effectively done. So um, now, so Richard, and I'm okay with this part. This is one of the things that may put some people off a little bit is, and this is where the science fiction or the fantasy part of this film happens. And I love those films, always have. I think it all started from watching Star Wars as a kid. And I was like, man, that is cool. And I just love science fiction, fantasy. Another one, The Never Ending Story. Whew, absolutely loved that movie the first time I saw it. Um, so I'm a big fan of it. Obviously, I'm reviewing films of that genre, but um, it's that element that I'm okay with, but it is a little shaky to say. So what he does is he goes back in time um, through his mind, believing he is there. Everything around him is of that setting you would believe if you saw it. So he goes back in time, and I apologize if my explanation of it is not that great, but it's it's well done by Reeve. He does a real good job making it believable. Um, but it's shaky. It's not. I I understand why they didn't get like a machine for him to travel back in time because no, he doesn't need to jump into a DeLorean to go back to 1912. That would just destroy the movie. But his method of getting back in time is it's okay as I said once again, but it's uh, not the best, I guess. But so, anyways, he goes back in time to meet her and truly fall in love with her and for her to fall in love with him. And that happens. So, Elise McKenna, as I said, um, at that time she was known as an actress. Today would be an actor. Um, she was very famous at her time and was like a number one box office draw at the time as well. Um, but her last play was at the actual Grand Hotel. And then she retired from acting, was not that old, and she never showed her face in public again after that, and led a very sheltered life from everyone else. So, but then, and that's she's portrayed um, uh, in the film by Jane Seymour or Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Um, but oh God, she's terrific in this. I must say, personally, like the first time I saw it, I'm going to get to the third lead. He may be more of a supporting, but he's big in this one too. But the first time I saw it, I was like blown away by Reeves' performance. I knew instantly it was terrific. This is great. This is Superman, not playing an action movie in any way. Okay, it's science fiction, but if I was going into the video store, another thing that ain't around anymore, to rent a movie, rent a VHS, this would be like in the romance section. If there was a romance section, there wasn't at mine, but it's first and foremost a romance movie. So like very dramatic movie, and he's knocking it out of the park. He's doing a great job. I was blown away by that. I was also blown away by her performance. I knew her from Dr. Quinn, but also Live and Let Die. I knew her from that, and I was like, whoa, she's a pretty darn good actor. And of course, Christopher Plummer. is the other actor, and I already knew he was a great actor, and I was like, oh yeah, he is great. But her performance, I must say, it actually gets better every time I see it. And maybe I've seen this movie 7 times in the last 10 years. That's when I saw it for the first time. And it seemed like to me, her performance gets better every time I see it. Um, so yeah, um, all three of them knock it out of the park on their performances. I'm pretty sure none of them got nominated for an Oscar, which is a shame. Um, I'm sure of it. I'll look it up and I'll let you know, but I'm sure of it. They were not because it was a flop in the States, supposedly. So, but yeah. Anyways, and then, as I said, Christopher Plummer plays a third main role, playing William Fawcett Robinson. Now, he is her manager. He's quite stern, doesn't like to give her more than an inch of space, more or less. But he does it, and I get this through his explanation, but in turn, Plummer's performance, where he is doing this um, because he believes he's doing it for the best of her and the best of her ability. And that ability is to be a star. He wants her to be a star. So he does not want anyone in her way or to really be any contact with her away from her performances, her acting, um, which is, you could say, quite noble or excellent of him. But his problem is he doesn't understand other people like Richard Collier may think exactly the same way. That's exactly what he wants her to do. Keep doing what you're doing, but I just want to be there along with you. And he can't see that as a reality or a possibility or that it could even work. So it's real good tension or very good in those two characters standing off more or less in battle for Elise. So it's really good. Um, Now, two things that I think act as characters in this film as well um, are the music, which I've already mentioned is terrific. I'm going to get into more of that in a sec here, and the setting, because most of the film takes place at the Grand Hotel, which actually took place on Mackinac Island in Michigan. Um, but it's excellent that most of the film is spent there, so you get to know the place. You feel comfortable there. You like the surroundings. Uh, but yeah, more about the music by John Barry. And there's even a wonderful, amazing piece by Sergei Rachmaninoff. I think that's how I pronounce it, called Rhapsody on a Theme of Paganini. Um, the music is truly amazing, as I've written down here, and really brings the film up. Even if you're not a gigantic fan of this film, you're going to remember the music, and the music is a great listen, even if you're not watching the film. Um, the music works wonderfully all on its own. There's so, as I wrote down as well, so much emotion in the music. It's great. Um, and as I found out, both of John Barry's parents had passed away recently. And this was the first piece of music he had written since both of them had passed, and maybe very well why there's so much emotion in the piece. Um, it's just right there. So, um, and Barry was actually hired due to Jane Seymour. They were actually close friends, and she said, "Why don't we get him to do the music?" And they were like, "We can't even afford to ask the guy." So she talked to him, and he agreed to do it. After I'm not sure if he read the script or just heard the story, whatnot. He agreed to do it, but um, they, instead of giving him a salary or a payment for the music, they actually gave him a percentage of the box office returns. And I think this was like his biggest selling album of all time. Was the soundtrack to Somewhere in Time, I believe. Um, so yeah, it's pretty cool. Uh, now, Matheson Story, who, if I forgot to mention, also did the screenplay as well. His story unravels very well. As I said, it's sort of the time travel part of it that may get a few people, and the other part, and I was totally fine with it. I had no problem. And this is a difference from the novel, is at the end of the film, Richard uh, finds a penny on him from 1979. So he's like, oh no. And he's just pushed back to where he came from because I guess his mind is now in 1979, or he sees proof that he can't be here, more or less. Um, but then Reeve puts in oh man, a wonderfully sad performance, and then dies of a broken heart. And and I was fine with that. And then at the end of the film, he and Elise reunite in heaven, or in their own personal heaven, their own personal paradise. And it's just the two of them and nothing else. It's just them. And I thought that was a great ending to the film. Now, I watched this with my wife. She thought it was really good. And then just right at the end, it fell for her. The whole thing of him dying of a broken heart. And then, oh, she was just like, it shouldn't have ended that way. And I was like, yeah, so I don't know. And like, I don't know. The end of the Titanic by James Cameron ended the same, didn't it? The two of them meeting or reuniting on the staircase in the Titanic. Same thing. But hopefully that doesn't get you or got you or whatever. As I said, I was fine with it. It's actually an additional sweetness to the film, that ending. It's good. I liked it a lot. Um, so yeah, to actually admit something, um, a big tough guy like me, I've actually cried watching this movie more than once. Yeah, so the tears might flow no matter who you are. Beware. It might creep up on you and just out of nowhere you're like, oh no, I'm crying. So it's a tearjerker. Um, that's for certain. One thing I loved and I thought was very cool was the photo that Richard falls in love with of Elise. When the photo is taken, she's actually looking at him. And I thought that was very cool. So he fell in love with her looking at him as she's falling in love herself. It's very cool. Um, it's almost adds like to a time loop kind of thing going on. Like it was destiny. Like it was very cool. Um, now Richard Matheson, actually the writer, has a cameo. Just one scene. It's of Christopher Reeve coming out of a room and he's using a straight razor. So he's got all these like toilet paper all over his face, I guess, where he had cut himself. Not used to using a straight razor, much like I would myself. I would not be very good with one of those either. And he just looks at him and says, astonishing, and then goes into the bathroom. So he has a little cameo as well. So, um, but yeah, like one thing as well, supposedly during rehearsals for the casting of Elise, Seymour was the only one who said she had never actually fallen in love before. And that may have caught Zork, or because I think he mentioned it in the documentary, so it really caught him. Um, so it was something that may have helped get her the role, but I mean, her performance is terrific, so it wasn't that alone that did it. But I felt there was real chemistry between Reeve and Seymour in this film. Um, they worked wonderful together, I thought, only for me to find out that they actually um, had a brief romance during the filming of this movie. Not to be the first or the last time that happened in a film, but they actually were having romance at the time. So there might have been some real feelings going on in there too. So maybe to make that chemistry happen, more or less. So it's kind of interesting. But my favorite scene in the film is where Elise is in the play. And then she goes right off script and just is more, well, she's talking to Richard, who's in the audience, of how she feels about him. And uh, it's a fabulous performance from her. And it just lifts your heart. Um, so that was my favorite scene in the play. So, but anyways, that's my review of Somewhere in Time, and I certainly hope you've seen it already and enjoy this film. As I said, I saw it about 10 years ago. I had actually never even heard of it. I was just looking around, um, actually looking at like science fiction films of certain years, and I came across this. I was like, "Oh, Christopher Reeve, I know him. Oh, Jane Seymour. Oh, Christopher Plummer. What?" And then I looked for it, I found it, and I enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it, and I have ever since my first watch. Anyways, that was fun. So I can't wait to come back for my next review, and I hope to do that soon. So until then, enjoy your movies.